Hello and welcome back to Focus Atlanta. Thanks so much for continuing to watch. We're going to close out the show talking a little bit about technology and perhaps some holiday boundaries we should have. I'm here with Dr. Scott Collins.
Hi, Keisha. It's great to be here.
Thank you so much for making time for us here in Atlanta. I think that we don't even think about it these days. Technology is everywhere. Can we talk a little bit about setting some boundaries?
Yeah, I mean, it is a challenge that all parents are going to face at some point. I have a 13 and 15-year-old, and so I am in the thick of it, and this is what I do for my professional life. But I have some experience at home too, and whether it's kids getting their first devices over the holidays as gifts or trying to impose some of these boundaries for kids that might have already had them. It's an ongoing challenge and it's an ongoing thing that parents have to grapple with.
I think that sometimes parents feel like they're going to be the bad guy if they put any, set any limits or things like that. Can we talk a little bit about the importance of the limits?
Yeah, I mean, for better or for worse, it is parents' job to be the bad guy sometimes, and we can't look at these devices just because we have one and they're everywhere and think, well, I should back off on that because I don't want to, I don't want to get pushback. And again, I think that the time to do that is, earlier the better in the kids' journey of having a device. Ideally, like as soon as they get that first one.
Oh, I love that. To that point, are there any, starter tips for parents? Because again, I think that sometimes if we can inch into these conversations, inch into the final outcome, sometimes we'll be a little bit better as opposed to saying, nope, everything's got to go, put everything in the drawer. Are there
Yeah.
small ways that we could start to taper back?
Yeah, so that makes me think of a couple things. I mean, first of all, having open and candid conversations with the kids about the need for expectations and the need for rules. I mentioned I have a 15-year-old, he's got his learner's permit, and we do not just say, go drive by yourself, buddy. That would be a disaster for everybody. So we shouldn't be just handing a device that has access to a whole range of inappropriate content, all sorts of dangers and threats without setting some rules. And so setting those rules with the kids to begin with. And then I think the second piece of that, it needs to be a two-way street and it needs to be a conversation, not just, hey, we need to have some rules, but what do you want? What's important to you, child? Like it is staying up with your friends, making sure you know what they're up to, or is it consuming content? Is it homework? And letting the kids be a part of that because that's going to help them in their own sort of as they get their own independence as they get older and learn how to use technology appropriately.
I love that. I think that sometimes as parents, we don't always consider it a conversation. You know what I mean? To your point, so often it's just you know, a order, so to speak.
Yeah.
So
Well, I think part of that, Keisha, comes down to the fact that at least for many parents, and I fall into this bucket that I didn't get a phone until I was in graduate school, and so I think for some people it is more because we don't understand both how important it is to the kids, but also maybe the range of threats that are out there. So it's easier to just say, here's the rule. And I frankly, I think we see that coming up with legislation and things like phone bans and things like that, which I don't think are a bad idea, but I also think that they have to be accompanied by parents actually talking to their kids.
I think that sometimes parents find it difficult to initiate these conversations because they don't always understand the kid's point of view. To your point, how it's an integral part of their socialization, how they are growing up. I mean, it's a totally different age. We just didn't have these issues.
No, no, and you're exactly right. And so it's easy for us as parents to fall back into this. Well, it's just, it may be the analogy that we think about. It's like watching TV. It is not watching TV. When watching TV for us was not a way there was no social capital that was tied up in TV and understanding what your friends are doing and communicating. And we might have stayed up late talking on the phone, but this is a different medium. So having those conversations, and there is some work to do as parents, as there always is, to educate ourselves about what, and each kid is going to be different, but educating ourselves about how do these devices play a role in their kids' lives, and how is that going to influence me as a parent for setting those limits and boundaries. We have to lead by example. We know from data that we've got, you see this if you just look around out in public, saying get off your device, don't do this while we're checking emails or looking at Instagram at the dinner table, not very effective. So I think that's a really, really important point to drive home.
Agreed. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to have you on the show.
It was a pleasure, Keisha. Thanks.
All right, guys, there are things that we can do, and much of it begins by starting with setting the right example. So let's take the opportunity to go to the website, learn a little bit more, and see how we can do better in our own households. Thanks, guys, for tuning in to this week's episode of Focus Atlanta. I hope to see you next Sunday here on CBS Atlanta.